we're meeting tonight in the midst of a cost of living scandal. You know, we'll all here have heard over the news and have felt it as well, the statistics of high inflation, rising prices, stagnating wages, our energy bills going through the roof, and the numbers of kids living below the breadline is just mind-boggling. Just to give you a few of those sort of statistics, average real wages have fallen at the fastest rate in 2 decades. And wages increases that have happened are being eaten up by inflation. Research that's recently been conducted by the Churchill Trust and Deliveroo has found that 1 in 10 parents are very likely to use a food bank to feed their children over the next 3 months. And that also, same research, showed that 1/3 of parents skipped at least 1 meal to keep up with other costs. And it's also expected that energy bills are going to stay above £2,000 for the next 2 years. It's shocking times. And those are just some of the shocking statistics that, you know, illustrate what is going on in this country at the moment. But I think personally, too often we don't hear enough about the stories of how those statistics are actually impacting people and the heroes that are actually trying to do stuff in their communities and campaign around the issues to address those problems that this country has got at the moment. So it's not about the graphs, it's about the stories and the impact that it has on people. So we've gathered tonight a selection of unsung heroes from right across the country who are up against the coalface of this crisis to share their stories. And bringing them together is one of the best storytellers in the country. Wynne-Jones, who you'll probably know from The Mirror. She'll be the chair for the night. She's a senior feature writer at the Daily Mirror and has a column called Real Britain, which if you haven't read, you should read because it really does illustrate some of the stories that we're going to be talking about tonight. And that's every Friday, covering stories of campaigning and government cuts, and also standing up for everyday people. In doing so, she's one of the few journalists who gives a voice to the stories of the extraordinary people living in this country and platforms some of the bold, fearless campaigns happening in our communities. So we'll be doing a bit of that today. Roz is going to have a conversation and kind of interview some of our guests to draw out some of the stories in the cost of living crisis over the next 45 minutes. We also meet on the eve of the TUC's cost of living rally on Saturday. So we'll hear more about that from Bella a bit later on. And we'll hear more about how you can get involved in some of NEF's campaigns as well and share your stories before we finish up at 7:15 p.m. One final bit of admin from me. We'll be recording this event tonight so we can post it on our website afterwards as well. But for now, over to you, Roz.
Hi there. Thanks so much to NEF and to Dan for such a lovely intro, very kind intro. And thank you to everyone here for being here on such a lovely evening. Don't forget, you can always take us to the park on some headphones if you haven't already. That doesn't go for the speakers, I'm afraid. You have to stay where you are, certainly for your bit. So I'm Wynne-Jones, as Dan says. I write the Real Britain column at the Daily Mirror, which stands up for our readers against cuts and austerity and on kind of social issues that matter to them. And I also run a few of the Mirror's more rogue special projects. These include the Wigan Pier project, where we spent a couple of years retracing George Orwell's steps across the Midlands and the north of the country. I also run Is Work Working, which is a partnership with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and ITV News, where we investigate working conditions in the gig economy. And you might have seen some of our exposés on Deliveroo, Bolt, Amazon, kind of names like that. And next week, you're the first to know that we're about to launch a new refugee project called People Move, which is going to tell the real stories behind the refugee crisis via Instagram. So have a look out for that. And I write, to sort of bring all these strands together, I write a Mirror Together newsletter, which is in my Twitter bio at Real Britain Ros. Anyway, I wanted to host this call tonight because I'm a massive fan of Neff. I'm really delighted to be here. As Dan says, I'm a storyteller and definitely not an economist. In fact, I'm quite enumerate. But of course, the stories that we tell are linked to a deeply unfair economic system, which is not working for our readers, most of the country, or indeed the planet. And sometimes, as a journalist who focuses on social issues, it can feel as if we're just sort of constantly highlighting the symptoms of our failed economic system rather than getting to the cure. And that's why I think a partnership with Neff is so interesting. I'm interested in the solutions and ways to involve the people I write about in those solutions. That, of course, starts with listening, which is why I think I really welcome this new cost of living listening project from Neff we're going to be hearing about later. And over the last few weeks, you might already know that the TUC has been holding some amazing town halls up and down the country with workers. The Mirror's been along for the ride at various meetings in Hastings, Liverpool, Stoke, Merthyr, Blackpool, and I was in workshop on Monday with Francis O'Grady talking to workers there, which was really fascinating. What we've been hearing over the last few weeks has been really distressing and, yes, angering. I think as well. We've got people who've come through 12 years of austerity now, unthanked through the COVID pandemic, still recovering from that, now tipped over the precipice into deep poverty by rising costs. You know, any kind of rainy day back of the sofa, savings are long gone, and low wages are no longer even covering basics for people. And even the food banks are running out of food, which I know we'll hear about later. In workshops, we heard from the NEU about kids wearing their school trousers back to front to hide the holes in their knees, kids wrapping up their school lunches and sneaking them home to take to their families. In Burnley this week, we heard a story about an elderly lady who was so cold and alone, she had tablets in a bowl ready to take if help hadn't turned up in time. And in Yarm on Teesside, we even met a Conservative councillor who told us she's now working 3 extra jobs, age 72, and is not best pleased with Boris. Pam told us she had had to become an actual vegetarian to reduce her food bills, and this has prompted quite an identity crisis for Pam. I think the whole everything that's kind of going wrong where she's living is kind of confusing her about whether the Tories are really on the side of working people or not. Anyway, our first 3 guests tonight know much more about this than me, and they're going to tell us a bit more about the scale of the crisis that they're seeing because they see it up close every day. So first of all, if that's okay, I'm going to introduce Annie McCormack from Kinrossshire in Scotland. She's chair of Broke Not Broken, which is a brilliant name, and part of the Independent Food Aid Network. Broke Not Broken started life as a food bank, but now provides local advice, counselling, school uniforms, transport and trips, and so much more. Annie, can you tell us a bit about what you've been seeing? I'm going to do the intros just before each person so that everyone remembers who they are when they're talking, if that's okay. But Annie, can you tell us a bit about Broke Not Broken? How much worse have things got where you are?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me here this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I think as a member of the Independent Food Aid Network, we're able to meet up with lots of other food banks in Scotland and across the UK. And I think what we were concerned about was what we were experiencing was just happening here. But it's not, it's happening absolutely everywhere, which is probably the most terrifying part of what's happening at the minute. We're based in rural Scotland. Our area is not high on the deprivation index. We're not an inner city, money isn't thrown at us to help people in deprivation or destitution, and yet we are seeing a massive increase in food bank usage here. And the people who are using the food bank at the moment are people who are in work. Employment is not a route out of poverty for people at the moment. Older people, unpaid carers, single parents, It's a cross-section of the community. And I think that's the thing as well, is that's why this issue is now so complicated. But I think using the cost of living crisis to kind of say, oh, that's the problem. It certainly is a massive problem, but this has been going on for years and years and years and years. And now we're at this crux. I think the thing that I find so upsetting is we're run by volunteers. I'm a volunteer, and we're at the front line seeing people who are coming in experiencing huge amounts of trauma. Using a food bank is a really traumatic experience. No matter how much dignity we try and put into it, we never, ever, ever want people to have to use a food bank. So working with the Independent Food Aid Network and Churchill Trust to try and do things like writing to Rishi Sunak, writing to the Scottish Government with a list of things. Here are things that you can do to put money in people's pockets is really, really important for us to feel like, okay, so practically we can give people food, we can help people with their gas and electric payments, we can help them with their school uniforms, we can help them with XYZ quickly, but that's not going to fix the bigger problem. So that's really important for us to come to things like this, where there's a more of a intersectional approach and understanding of poverty, because I think for so long, food banks have been used to fill this gap. And I think that's probably where the anger part comes in for me, is why are we doing this? Why are we filling this gap for years and years and years? I mean, we've got people who are being referred for months and months and months, years and years, because their financial situation's just not changing. I was at an event called The Gathering yesterday, and I went to a talk by Jack Monroe, and we posed a question to her, which is, why are we doing this? Are we letting the government off the hook by having food banks? And she said, and I really appreciated this, is dead people can't riot. So by keeping people alive and keeping people off the cliff edge, we're hopefully saying to them at some point down the line, you're going to have the energy to fight for yourselves, and that's why we're doing this. But I think anger is definitely a good description of where I am at the minute, and that's why it's important to do things like this. You really do have to stop me speaking, otherwise I just will keep going. I don't know if that's useful, but if you have any.
I mean, that to me is fantastic, Annie. It's such, I mean, I've heard Jack say that before, and I think it's such a rallying cry. And, you know, we talked about this earlier, me and Dan, in fact, you know, have we now become the big society? Or was that the prediction? That's what Cameron wanted. It's what the Tories wanted us to do, because of course they know that we're not going to just sit there while people go hungry and kids don't have, you know, a school uniform to put on. But how do we dismantle poverty is the big question, and that's part of, you know, what we're here to do. But also the work that you're doing is absolutely essential, because if no one's putting the sticking plaster on, you know, it's just unthinkable.
You're bleeding out all over the place. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I just wanted to bring in Bill, who I know has done some brilliant work in this area as well. I did some of my mirror training in the Newcastle West End, where Bill Corcoran works. He's from the Newcastle United Fans Food Bank, and he helps coordinate a group of Geordie football fans to collect money and to provide support to Newcastle West End Food Bank, as well as campaigning against poverty in the city. And I know Bill was kind of saying before that he was, this is quite a sort of renegade way of providing aid, and it's a different one. But I think there's something really moving about the solidarity that football fans have showed up and down the country with the communities where they support their teams. How did you mobilise football fans, Bill? Tell us.
Well, Ros, you know what Newcastle's like. Unity against adversity is something we've had ever since the Romans invaded us 2,000 years ago. I think it's something that every football fan knows, that you get the worst transport, you get the worst treatment, you sometimes get the worst media, not by you, but by the other lot. And we were inspired, it has to be said, by our comrades from Merseyside Ian Byrne and Dave Kelly, and then by some fantastic people in Glasgow. And we just picked that up because we knew that when we heard that 50% of the food aid at the West End Food Bank, and this is just after Daniel Blake had come out and it was in the pictures and everything, 50% of the food that they were getting was coming from London. And the three of us just looked at each other and just sort of went, no, we just cannot have that. And football's the kind of thing where if you're a football fan, maybe it's the same as an opera fan or something, you can lose yourself for an hour and a half. You can forget about the troubles of the world, political economy, foreign policy, whatever. But not when there's a little girl starving half a mile away from the ground. You can't forget that. So we just decided to do something about it. It's very simple. I don't think we're heroes. We just shake buckets. We shake trees and things fall out of it. We shake opinions. In the more than 5 years we've been going, we've raised probably, well, certainly more than 500,000. And probably that's responsible for about 30 to 40% of what the West End Food Bank, it's now covering the whole of Newcastle. Because there's poverty of, like Annie was fun. I think Annie, what you said was incredibly moving and it's philosophical and wonderful. There's lots of poverty in very affluent areas as well as, you know, in what you might term the poor areas. And it's getting to that. It's getting from the regional to the national to the hyper local to the three families on the street who are going through it and have been made redundant. And they're desperately trying to keep the house going because if they don't, then the family gets split up and they're on the streets. And I think, I mean, I remember my gran. My granny was a pitman's widow. The West End Food Bank's headquarters is right next door to where my grandfather, who was a mines rescue man, used to be stationed. And my gran was a 1930s housewife who remembers the means test, remembers all of that kind of shame of poverty. And I think the great problem we've got is that fear, isolation, cold, and hunger. The things that make people miserable, lonely, cold, and isolated. We're trying to get people together and say, all right, you know what? We can all of us accept a lower standard of living if we're together and smiling at each other. If there's people talking to you, if you've got hope for the future, if you've got culture, if your kids are learning things, if you're developing, we can all take a bit of, you know, hey, the Northeast's been doing that for years and many other places. We can all take a lowering of a standard of living, but you can't have it when kids are going from hunger to an empty, cold house, expected to do homework, can't have a shower, have no breakfast, and then they're supposed to go to school and learn. Now, I'll tell you one thing, if I was 12 years, I was bad enough anyway. If I was 12 years old and going through that, I'm not learning anything. And you speak to my teacher colleagues, they'll say, you put a kid like that in a class, he or she will stop everybody else learning everything. And what kind of society do we have that? And this is the thing that makes me angry when I bother thinking about it. The pathetically small sticking plaster it would take from this government to understand that. And the idea that Ian Byrne and Dave Kelly had with Sami Chakrabarti was a thing called the right to food, which means that when kids go to school, they get fed, they get the breakfast, they get the dinner, they get the tea, and then we keep the school dinner halls open and we get the community in. So if you're an isolated elderly person, frightened, you know, you could be 90 odd years old, or somebody in a food bank was over 100. They've been through the 30s. Well, God, you know, we're going through the 30s again this winter coming. And we've got 3 months to prepare for it. And we're going to have places where we can have people getting washed and people having their clothes washed and people doing the homework together and people being fed and young mothers, you know, getting their medication and the rest of it. And we need to develop that friendship, that community, that society that allows us to go through a bit of, you know, austerity. We can do that. All of our cities have been through that before, but we can't do it when we're isolated. An 8-year-old girl who's hungry and hasn't had their tea and isn't going to have a breakfast and is cold and lying in bed to keep warm, she can't do that. So what we're trying to do as a fundamental is bring the tens of thousands of football fans that we have at St. James's Park to put a couple of quid in our buckets outside, which they do, bless them. I was talking to John McCorry, who's the CEO of the Newcastle Food Bank, And he said the contributions to the food bank have dropped by about 50% in supermarkets over the last 2 months. There's a direct implication of austerity and what people are going through. Contributions at the football match have actually increased. So bless the generosity of our fans, and we're being helped as well. One of our owners is matching those donations, and he's actually, I believe, somebody who contributes towards Boris Johnson. And I think even he understands that having children starving, having people falling faint at work is not good for business. It's not good for community. It's not good for society. It's not good for the country. And the right to food legislation, which we believe in, we don't think it's an ideological thing at all. We think it's just as good for affluent areas, places like Surrey where teenage mental health is a problem because it gets people together, as it is for poor places where we just need to get some food in bellies and get some education done and have a better country in the future.
That's absolutely fantastic, Bill. And I think it's so interesting to me that Daniel Blake has become a sort of rallying cry almost for the city of Newcastle. It could have been seen as a kind of badge of shame, like completely wrongly, but it's just been taken on.
It is. And we had to do something about it. And you look in the back of the War Memorial and it'll say 1914, the response. Well, we had to respond to Daniel Blake, and we had to say, we're not lying down and letting it happen. And the natural place, we don't have big industries anymore. The shipyards are gone, the mines are gone. Even Brown Ale's made somewhere else. So the thing we had was our football team, which was
fascinating that you're saying that the fans are, that food bank is, the things are increasing there because that is a place of community and connection and all of that, as you're saying, where the big industries have gone, which is fascinating. And there's so much hope in that, because I think the more that we can mobilise where people are, the more effective we can be. And that's definitely, what you're doing there. I just want to, there's only a bit left in this section, so I want to make sure we bring in Sue. Sue Potts is the CEO of the Venus Centre in Bootle in Merseyside, another place we do a lot of work in the Real Britain column. Venus supports women with a whole range of services around mental health, housing support, drop-in services, counselling, money management, and much more. So I wanted to ask you, we know that women would have been the worst affected by austerity and took the biggest hit in the pandemic in lots of ways, partly because of, the working in care work and supermarkets and all these kind of different places. Is the cost of living crisis now hitting women more than other groups again, would you say? Have you noticed?
Most definitely. And I would say that the women that we support, the studies that we've commissioned demonstrate that women and families accessing our services are least likely to seek support, and particularly seek support from a statutory service. We're working with very, very vulnerable women and families where there are compounding issues, mental health issues, drugs and alcohol issues, and dependencies. And women who've been in prison, women who've fled domestic abuse, for example. And those compounding issues make it very, very difficult for people to pick up the threads and be organised. So we're seeing a lot more problems around what we would say are priority debts. When people come through our doors, we offer a holistic service, and sometimes people might walk in with a mental health issue, but we'll also ask about money management. And all of those issues compound on each other. But where we would see problems with people might take out payday loans or have credit cards or store cards or anything like that, and they become the issue because the interest rates rack up on those things, we're seeing more and more people in debt with priority debts. And they're the things that we'd say that you have to pay, such as your rent, such as your energy and your utility costs. And that leaves very, very little money for food. So we work in partnership with a whole range of services. And if people come to us in crisis, we will immediately support them to access the local food bank. And we do that referral for them. But we would issue an emergency food parcel to make sure that somebody was going home with food for that evening and something to get them across the next few days. We're seeing women asking us now for food that they can cook only in the microwave. They're looking through the bags and going, well, what would this cost me to cook? And I was there the other day and somebody refused a bag of pasta. Now, if you can't afford to boil a bag of pasta, you know, what have we come to? It's a cheap filling meal, healthy meal for your kids. And if people are handing them back, you know, we are definitely in a terrible crisis. We're at the position where our money management, it's not a funded commission service. We seek funds to cover that. And you know, we're looking at the moment, we're funded by the Energy Redress Fund, which is mainly about how you switch providers. Well, basically, that was your option. Switch your provider, get on a better tariff. Now we're looking at hints and tips like boil your kettle once, fill your flask to make your cuppa through the day. You know, we're sort of running out of tricks. And the benefit trap that people end up in now with families is that you can never get a claw, you can never get a little hook out. So when things have been bad in the past and you might have a growing family, if your teenage child gets a job, they might be giving you a little bit and it frees up that little bit more income. Well, now that's taken off immediately from mum. So we're seeing mums who might not have the best relationship with their teenage sons and daughters. They're getting a little part-time job at 16 and 17, having to declare it, and that immediately comes off mum's income, which leaves much less for you to go around, because there's no guarantee that that child is going to give you any keep. So we're seeing people trapped. It's a poverty trap, but there's no angle, if you like. There's no way out. There's becoming more and more less and less able to offer those routes out of the poverty trap because the doors are closing on us.
It's really interesting what you were saying there, Sue, about running out of tricks. And I think that's something that's I've really had in common with so many people I've interviewed over the last 2 or 3 months, really, particularly since the energy bills and the fuel costs and things have started to go. So people have all sorts of tricks, as you say, like this idea that people who are on low incomes don't know how to budget or don't know how to cook or don't know how to make a potato go between 6 people or, you know, or whatever. Yeah, is absolutely ludicrous. People have all sorts of tricks, but they're running out of them. I mean, I met an old lady recently she was 78, I think, or 79, and she was telling me that she goes running every morning in a jumper and then sits in her jumper in the house to try and just keep as much of that warmth for as long as possible. She reckons she was running about 10k a day at 79. You're just thinking people are so inventive, but how can they keep being inventive? You know, you can't keep on being inventive forever, as you say. They're kind of running out of ideas. And
part, you know, it's a vision much further than the future, but I think it's fundamentally wrong to have a profit from what people need to live a very basic life. Yeah. And the answer to this energy crisis is to take this energy back into public ownership. And the only profit that should be made should be invested in cheaper renewable energies. To have profit share when people can't afford to boil a bag of pasta, I think is a disgrace.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna finish this section now because we've got to go onto the next one. But I just want to say, I just think you're all absolutely amazing. I know I'll speak for everyone on this call. I just think the work you're doing in your communities is absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, I don't know what we were doing without you, to be honest. I feel like this about the church and many organisations at the moment. It's just, if people weren't physically there in the space, in the community, helping people, I don't know where we'd be. So huge thank you to all of you. And the next section is supposed to kind of be the hope section of the evening, but I think you've already given us so much hope just in the work that you're doing and the solidarity that you're showing. You know, that's not charity, that's solidarity and standing with people in your community. So thank you so much for that. In the next section, I was actually thinking about what Bill was saying about his the Pitman's widow. because I was in Worksop on Monday night at one of the TUC town halls, and that was at the Manton Sports Club, which is on the site of the old Manton colliery around there. And there's a kind of colliery wheel sunk in the road just outside the sports club, which kind of, reminds you of a time when, not to romanticise mining, but obviously it was a time when people had guaranteed work at decent pay, and there were strong trade unions that kind of fought back. And since the mines closed, that area's now got the biggest employers are a B&Q warehouse, where you can imagine the conditions. And employees there were recently offered a pretty derisory below inflation pay rise, but we met some workers in Worksop from Unite the Union who have been running a picket line right where the miners used to stand in kind of 1984 to 1985. And these new strikers were they were very different. They were often mums who'd kind of dropped their kids at school before they got to the picket line. And there was quite a big dispute has gone on in Manton. That was one of the reasons that we were there. A local MP, a lovely guy called Brendan Clark-Smith, had suggested that union members could give up their subs if they wanted to save some money. But actually it turned out that it was much better to be in the union, because B&Q had offered 4%, I think, which was below inflation, and the members ended up winning a 10.75 pay deal, which was absolutely fantastic. And at the same event, we also met some brilliant bakery workers from Nottingham who were kind of flan and quiche makers who'd won a 7% pay rise through industrial action. So I think we need to think that when we work together, we can do things. Just look at what's happened, with Rwanda this week. I know this is not a cost of living issue, but it's really hard not to mention it, because I'm sure it's on so many people's minds. There was solidarity in action, direct action, legal action, people lying down the street, people fighting in the courts, people signing petitions, people contacting their MPs, and literally just, being prepared to put their bodies on the line, in front of those vans that were going. So when we stick together, we win. And it may only be a temporary reprieve in the case of Rwanda, but at least we've shown to people seeking sanctuary that, that we have solidarity with them, that there are people that want them to be here. And we've now got a bit of time, because I think the government's admitted today that they're not actually going to send anyone on a flight till after the court ruling. So there's a bit of time for everyone to try and act on that. Anyway, that's a bit off track, sorry. From tonight, we've got a dose of hope from our next three storytellers, who are all brilliant campaigners, again, in their own right. The first person I'm going to introduce is Bella Fashola. She's a rail cleaner and a member of the RMT union, representing the Justice for Churchill campaign. Along with her co-workers, they're campaigning for a £15 living wage. She's also involved in TUC's rally on Saturday. And Bella, I have to say, I love this campaign. It's an absolute inspiration to all of us. Everyone was pretty keen on cleaners during the pandemic, I seem to remember. And yet now, along with care workers and everybody else, you just kind of get abandoned as soon as it feels like it's kind of back to normal. Can you tell us, how did you get such an ambitious campaign off the ground? Because it's ambitious, it's brilliant, and you've engaged people up and down the country.
Thank you so much, Ros. And I just got to say, everybody on here who I've heard speak, and everyone even just sitting on here to hear all our stories, you're all wonderful people. You're brilliant, brilliant people. We're the brilliant minds that are going to turn this all around. The way we kicked off this campaign was due to the sheer selfishness and bullying side of our company, Churchill. We actually started last year doing the site visits, campaigning, going outside Parliament, doing demos, going outside Churchill's head office, doing rallies. It's not been an easy task. We have over 40 different nationalities across the contracts, but to see how far we've come is wonderful. So I'm hoping I can be the hope for everybody on here, that our story will be the hope for you guys to join us. Let's stand up as working people we're not going to live in poverty forever. It's just not going to happen. We are going to turn the tables on this. The Churchill campaign is something that's been coming for a long time. Privatisation has no room anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. None of us should ever have been outsourced, because all it is a race to the bottom of these private outsourcing firms to keep bidding on contracts, underbidding and undercutting each other every single time. And who loses? Us, the workers, the people on the ground. We lose every single time. I got the strength and courage to go out with fellow RMT activists and those in other trade unions to start this campaign. Through the end of 2020, in the pandemic, COVID started getting rife in Hastings, where I live. I live at home with my mother because I can't afford to move out, because it just wouldn't happen. I'm 26 years old. Don't even see it happening in the next 2 years until we turn this all around. I had to come off work for 6 months to look after my mother, as she was diagnosed with cancer. Now, I'd been working for Churchill for around 3.5, 4 years at that point. And when I told them that I couldn't continue to work any longer, I needed to stay at home and look after my mum, they came back to me and said, obviously, we've tried everything within our power to help you. However, what we can do for you is offer you unpaid sabbatical leave. So I was on unpaid sabbatical leave for 6 months, obviously tried going down the universal credit route, which is a very, very long process. It takes 4 weeks, I think, to just register your claim. And then by the time that I'd got my first payment, it was like £100. It wasn't until May, the month that I went back to work, that I managed to get the full, I think it was £429. So you can imagine the struggle that was. But that's just my story. I've heard so many stories on these site visits from my fellow colleagues that are just absolutely heartbreaking. You've got full-time working people going to work through the day, cleaning the trains to keep the public safe, keeping them sanitised. Some of them are sleeping at bus stops of a night time because they cannot afford to live. It's absolutely disgusting. I've seen on our surveys that there's a mother and she has 4 children and they all have to sleep in one room because that's all they can afford, heating wise. It's absolutely disgusting. We're not going to put up with it. As Ross said, I, alongside many others, will be speaking on Saturday at the We Demand Better rally. I urge everybody to attend if possible. Myself and my cleaners are on our 11th day strike action as of today. We've booked Saturday the 18th as another day strike action in order to get all of us along there so we can be a part of the bigger movement, the wider movement, the future of us being organised as workers. We can do this. We are the majority. The millionaires may think they're at the top now, but watch how the tables turns, because we've got this in the bag. We're not going to let them win, and I refuse to watch my colleagues struggle to survive rather than live any longer. Thank you.
That is, yeah, what a rallying call, Bella. Thank you so much for that. And I think, you know, how can people who are in work sleeping in bus stops? That's just something that's gone so fundamentally wrong with our society and our economy. And how, you know, that's just, it's just absolutely shocking. And thank you so much for your work to challenge that, and we'll follow your campaign with interest. I wanted to introduce next Lizzie Woods, another union member, this time from the London Renters Union. She's a tenant, and she's going to tell us about some of the success stories they've been having in the kind of local election campaigns in London. I think we know there's no social justice without housing justice. Housing's a huge part of how, you know, the money that disappears every month out of everybody's wage packet. But taking on the sort of vested interests of housing is not easy. The mighty developers, the councils, the government, it's a big task. So how have you been doing it, Lizzie?
Yeah, I'd like to first of all just echo what Bella said. It's hugely inspiring to be amongst everybody tonight. Really, really great to hear all the stories of everybody else that's already shared. Yeah, I think I completely agree with what you just said. The average monthly UK rent now is 37% of a single earner's average income, which rises to about 52% in London. And in the white paper that was published today on renting, it came out that 45% of rented sector households have no savings whatsoever. And in the context of everyday life, that's devastating. Within a cost of living crisis, it's just impossible. And high rents and poor living conditions for renters are increasingly just seen as a way of life in this country. And it's hardly surprising because, as you said, a quarter of Conservative MPs are landlords. And when you digest that information, that it's beneficial and it's profitable for power holders and for politicians to act in the interest of landlords, it becomes obvious that action's needed from the bottom up. Because, just waiting for change while you're sat in your overpriced, tiny, cramped rental home while the walls are crumbling and the damp spreading just isn't really an option anymore. So in the LIU, we did decide to create a campaign around the local elections that happened recently. We really wanted to build the power of renters and put the voices of renters at the forefront of policymakers and just demand real tangible change. So we had 6 branches take part across 6 boroughs in London. And in each branch, we had members local to that borough vote on and decide on demands that were going to be important to take to power holders in their areas come April, May time. In Hackney, which is where I'm based, those demands became the Hackney Housing Charter. And they set out the main areas for change that we decided as a branch were needed in Hackney. And at the end of April, after gaining commitments from independent councillors and Green councillors, and just flooding local councillors' inboxes with demands from renters across Hackney, we went into negotiations with Hackney Council and we came out with around 20 commitments to improve renting in the borough. The commitments were everything from agreeing not to work with the Home Office to pass on any information to them about residents that they were speaking to committing to build 1,000 extra council homes at social rent. And I mean, there's plenty others. I could sit here and list them all and come across as just the driest 20-something you've ever had to listen to. But they're all really, really tangible effects. And it's really hopefully going to give a voice to renters throughout London and in Hackney to really change the housing system for good. And what is really important to say as well is that everybody on that campaign team had never done anything like this before. We were all really nervous going into it. There was a lot of anxiety around not having enough knowledge, around being completely unprepared. But in the end, it was the council that was unprepared for us. And it meant that we were able to create power as a union at a time when people feel just completely powerless. And as everyone has so articulately put it today, the cost of living crisis is hitting so hard. And there's so many headlines around inflation and around the rising cost of X and the rising cost of Y. And there's so much to feel grim about, I guess. But this campaign, for me at least, has really shown how powerful communities can be. There's 11 million renters in this country. Just imagine everything that we could do if we got organised. In the Hackney campaign, there was 10 of us involved, probably from start to finish, intermittently. All of us, I think, have full-time work outside of the campaign. Even if there was 20 of us, but imagine what we could do with 11 million.
Fantastic, thank you. And it's amazing to hear you say that as well about winning. I think winning's really addictive, and when you win things, you want to win more things. And it's not just, it's too easy at the moment to just feel that we're locked in a cycle where we just keep losing and the Tories just keep winning every election and we're just constantly getting pushed back. So just seeing this grassroots organising where we actually win and we gain is important for all of us. To see people winning and to see the energy of, your campaign and Bella's campaign. I want to introduce as the next person, Cllr Jane Corbett. Jane's the mayoral lead for tackling poverty in Liverpool and is a councillor in the Everton ward of the city, another place that we know well in the Real Britain column. She's a fearless anti-poverty campaigner and has inspired NEF's work around the living income. And this is bold work and important work, and we'd love to hear about it, Jane.
Oh, thanks. So I was absolutely made up, to be honest with you, when I heard that NEF had this phrase living income, because we've been trying in Liverpool to come up with a phrase where it pulled everything together. Because at the moment, because so much is happening and it's been happening for so long from austerity when the Tories kicked this all off, what then happens is you've got lots and lots of campaigns out there. You have to go back up to the start. You go, what's actually this about? And we came up with this phrase living income in our council between ourselves, and then I heard that NEF were doing it and I thought, wow. So we connected and we had an amazing meeting. I think it was December 20, when there was NEF, there was Living Wage Foundation, there was IFAN, there was, I think, the Children's Society, there was a Runnymede Trust, and it was like the gathering point where we said, I'll tell you what, if we could get round living income, because it says what it says what it does on the tin. And the trick with the Tories, of course, is that you blame other people, you make it more complicated than it is. And the living income title and headline is a rallying cry, and it's a gathering point. If you then link up with the Michael Marmot stuff, and obviously he's often on the news, which is really helpful, you've got a healthy standard of living for all, another rallying cry. But then the clever thing would be somehow to get it back to when the Equality Act was set up, Harriet Harman, just before all the shutters came down, 2010, there was that bit in there that was section 1. And I remember, because she was in Liverpool and she pointed at us and she went, and she said to me, Jane, there's the anti-poverty hook in the Equality Act. The Tories and the coalition before them refused to enact it. It was the only bit of the Equality Act that they had to actually start. So that needs to be sorted. However, you go back to the practicalities on the ground. You know, Liverpool, like loads of councils across the country, have had massive, massive cuts. So can we protect our anti-poverty grants? We've managed to do it year on year. We did it this year for the budget. Whether we'll be able to do it next year, I don't know. We've got the commissioners in now. So we give out emergency grants. I found often talk about cash first rather than food first. And that's what we try and do in Liverpool. Cash to people in their hands. They have their dignity. They keep their dignity. They go and buy what they need. But we back that up with white goods and beds so people can put as much money as they can on food, on their lecky, on their clothing. But it's trying to link that together. And I think for me, I'm lucky enough to live in Everton, which is classed as the most disadvantaged ward, but it's one of the strongest wards in the city because people have looked after themselves and their networks and their families for years. It's now at breaking point, as it is, as Bill said in Newcastle. And I remember going up to see you, Bill, with Ian. It's now at breaking point, and it's wider, as Annie said before, it's much, much wider across the country, which is terrifying, but it's also an opportunity because suddenly people that don't normally have to face poverty in their lives are saying, is this really what it's about? Is the safety net shredded now and we are expected to just fall through and look after ourselves? Are we meant to go to food banks all the time? So I think that living income title is brilliant. And I think the more we can push it and remind people and constantly say it, living income is, I think it could change it. That's why I'm so made up with NEF that they've absolutely gone for it.
Jane, not to put you in a difficult position, but the Labour Party are not quite there on living income, are they? I can see you're a Labour councillor. What's a bit
longer, Roz, I don't know how much I'll be able to take. Okay, so it's a hook that the Labour Party, across all of the different parts and groups within the Labour Party, can say, this is what we were built on and this is what we believe. So my background is the old Christian socialist movement, you know, rather than communism. It's the same stuff. Living income, dignity, humanity. Do you remember when Amnesty had right of the human or something? It was a black and white one. It was about the human, you know, respect for the human. That's what it's about, and that's the connecting point for Labour. Forget everything else, go for living income, and then everybody across the country is going, well, at least someone bloody cares. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, it's getting recorded, Ross. We better cut that out.
I have to say I think you're absolutely right about the name. Like, I know recently Dan and I were talking about power not poverty, the new kind of Farage idea. And the trouble with that is it's another of those fantastic phrases that you know will be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think you're right with things like living income, you know, that's a that is actually a great rebranding of the term. And in a sense, I know NEF and other places have done huge amounts of work on framing and how we frame our ideas, because we just you kind of see people getting outframed all the time by others.
People do, don't they? They get it. If you say living income, they go, "Oh God, yeah." So you have to repeat it, and then it's like, you know, have to have discussions about, you know, basic income and all that. You just have to talk living income that moves as the thing, as inflation goes, as it's living, and it means that people can live and have dignity as well. So I think it's a gathering point. It's a positive connecting point. Don't make despair convincing, make hope possible, was Raymond Williams, the great socialist, who said that, or words to that effect. That's what it's about. That's why I love it. It's a call that says we can do this.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And there's, you know, thank you to yet another 3 people. We're going to be bursting with hope by the time we get out into the fresh air at the end of this. So thank you very, very much, all of you. So finally, we're just going to hear about some of the campaigns that NEF is working on up and down the country. There's 3 flagship campaigns which are going their own way to addressing the cost of living and calling for radical solutions to the systemic problems that Britain's facing. We're going to hear a little bit about a couple of them and how you can get involved. First of all, we're going to have Chaitanya Kumar, who is going to tell us about the Great Homes Upgrade. Is that the right way around?
That's right.
Is that right? Yes, brilliant.
Yes.
So tell us about that. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Cool. All right. Firstly, apologies, I'm outside, but hopefully you can all hear me. I've been tasked to speak about a campaign, the Great Homes Upgrade, in a couple of minutes. I think the first thing to acknowledge is one of the most cost-effective ways of dealing with the ongoing cost of living crisis, I think, is in helping people cut their energy demand. And that is where retrofitting homes, upgrading homes, making them more comfortable and reducing energy bills ultimately is the goal. We initiated this campaign last September with a set of demands of the national government that includes 11.7 billion public investment commitment that we think is necessary to upgrade about 19 million homes across the country that are in dire need of insulation and low carbon heating measures. Since the launch, we've been able to influence the Labour Party's agenda, at least on this issue. They have committed to an annual investment of 6 billion for the next 10 years. So if they come into power, they commit to spending 60 billion over the next decade, which I think is quite significant in retrofitting millions of homes. The second thing to acknowledge is we're trying to work quite closely with a lot of local authorities and combined authorities. We've got an ongoing program right now with South Yorkshire Combined Authority. We produced an options paper on what the authority could be doing to insulate, retrofit their local housing stock. And we hope to work with them further in the future in actually delivering on a plan. Instead of a theoretical plan, actually operationalizing it is our hope. And the third thing is my colleague Heather is doing some fantastic work on the ground in a few constituencies in the north, High Peak, Rother Valley, and a few others, with the intention of local organizing. So she's knocking on doors, talking to people, gathering stories, and really understanding how people understand this idea of retrofit. Perhaps I should stop using the word retrofit myself, but the idea of upgrading people's homes and making them more comfortable and cutting energy bills, that's the goal. And she couldn't be here, but hopefully I'm doing justice to her work. But do follow the campaign. I think my colleague Clifford has posted the link on chat, and do sign up for the campaign as well. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I'm glad to see somebody's outside on this warm evening. So I'd like to introduce Becky Malone now, who's going to talk about the living income project that we were just hearing a bit about before.
Thanks, Roz. And yeah, thanks to everyone who's spoken. I feel like you're all very tough acts to follow. So I'm sorry that I am kind of one of the last people to speak. But yeah, just a bit of info on NUFC's Living Income campaign. So like, as Jane mentioned a bit about, it's basically kind of responding to a lot of what we've heard today about the fact that for a lot of people, if like life knocks you back, there's not like something to catch you, there's nothing there to support you, because our social security system at the moment is just completely broken, it's not working. So like all the things that people are facing now with like, you know, I guess we had COVID, we've got the cost of living crisis and Brexit, we've got all these like ongoing crises kind of going on alongside each other, and people just do not have like the resources in order to like cushion those things. So that's why we're kind of campaigning for this idea of a living income, which would be a bold new way of doing income support. So it would help people to deal with like these challenges that we're facing at the moment in like the sort of fast changing world. The idea is it would be like a really responsive system. It would be tailored so that the sort of support you'd get is like no strings attached, and there'd be no 5-week wait. And it would set like a sort of minimum floor so that there's like a level below which no one can fall. And so that makes sure that everyone has peace of mind that, you know, if something comes at you like a broken boiler or like a rise in energy bills, that you've got something there to cushion you. So far what we've done on the campaign, we launched it last year, and so this year it's all about sort of establishing the idea and trying to move people away from this idea that sort of, you know, social security isn't sort of like a necessity or isn't something that we should be investing in. Yeah, but we've been working with other organisations on the ground to sort of develop the idea, and we're excited to be sort of planning a big new launch of the living income policy sort of framing and the kind of details of the policy in September and October. And so the launch will involve an opportunity for like everyone to get involved. So we'll be sharing details soon by email. So you can go to the Living Income website and sign up to get updates, and then you can get involved and find out a bit more about the launch. And sort of like in the meantime, we're sort of supporting efforts from like across the sector to put pressure on the Chancellor to make sure we get some changes to the social security system. Obviously at the moment we've got this sort of emergency responses that the Chancellor's put in place, but we need a lot more for the people that are most in need and who are going to be like struggling the most. So the interventions so far are sort of welcome, but they're also temporary. You know, when we get to October and also when these things run out next year, we've got no long-term vision for like ensuring that everyone is always supported. So we're kind of trying to do some of that long-term thinking with the living income. So yeah, do get involved if you're interested. Thanks.
Fantastic, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for that. And thank you to just hearing from so many aspiring people has kind of blown my mind a bit, I think, this evening. I'm sure Neff will share a list of everybody, and if you want to get in touch with any of them, leave a note in the chat. I know I really want to hear more from quite a few people, and my news story antennae are kind of tingling with wanting to tell some of these stories in the Mirror, so thank you for that. I thought I'd finish, sort of wrap up my section with, there were some words that Frances O'Grady said at the workshop meeting on Monday that had kind of stayed in my mind, where she said, "We don't just say we deserve better for working people, we demand it. So it doesn't work for working people, it doesn't work for Britain." And you'll be able to hear more from Frances at tomorrow's demo in central London. So that is for me to hand back to Dan, your host from NEF, who I don't think we've actually said yet is also an incredible campaigner and organiser in his own right. And it's fantastic to see him leading NEF's work in this way. So thank you, Dan. And you're going to tell us about the next steps.
Thanks for your kind words, Roz. Wow. Like powerful stories. And like, I think it's just, you know, worth us just giving people who spoke a round of applause, some serious like heroes in our community who are holding things together and also campaigning for a better future. So a bit of a round of applause for everyone would be amazing, and get involved in the campaigns and the work that they're obviously doing as well. And I'm going to come back to Bella actually in a bit, just to give one final plug for the rally. If she's still on there. But just very quickly, like as Lizzie said, you know, one of the things that I've taken away from tonight is how powerful communities and people can be when they come together. And that is the thing that I think we have to take as the hope. You're seeing here how people have done that around rents, around providing support for families, for campaigning for a living income. Really powerful stuff, but that only works if we come together and actually if we tell our stories together and act on those stories as well. So I just want to finish off from our bit really before just handing over to Bella finally, just to say thanks to everyone here for tuning in tonight, being part of this amazing storytelling evening. It's quite unusual for NEF, I think, in many respects, because most of the time it is often a discussion about the kind of economic statistics, and tonight feels like actually we got underneath that as well, and we want to continue to do that. So actually, as part of the campaign that we are developing over the summer, we're actually wanting people to tell their stories about the cost of living crisis as well. And the reason why we're doing it is because we need the government to act on these issues. So following tonight, we're going to send out to you what's a video ask, and we're going to ask you and the people that you care for, love, work, campaign with, support, to also share their stories of the cost of living crisis, both the anger and the hope. But this is how we want to act. So we're going to send out some information about a video ask. What we're hoping to do is a very simple tool to use. We want to send one story every day to Boris Johnson so that he understands the challenges that people are facing right across the country. It's super easy to use, so please do that. So finally, I'd just like to invite Bella just to give a final plug for the TUC rally. I don't know whether you're
Hello, I'm still here. Sorry, I kept going in and out. My phone was playing up. Just before I go on to the timings and location points, I want everyone to remember on here that we will decide our future, and you must all attend this rally because we need to start planning for it, because we're not going to struggle to survive anymore. We're actually going to start living. So please attend if possible. The march form-up begins at 10:30. The form-up's outside New Broadcasting House on Portland Place. You can find all of this information on the TUC website. The march will move off from Portland Place at 12 p.m, heading down Regent Street, before turning onto Haymarket and through Trafalgar Square, onto Whitehall, before ending at Parliament Square for the rally. The route is 1.7 miles in length, and unions will be asked to provide stewards. You don't need to know that bit, sorry. We will then be holding a rally at Parliament Square between 1 p.m. and 2:45. And we have many speakers. I'm not going to list them all. If you need any more information, I'm going to pop my email address here, or you can contact Dan or go on the TUC website. And just to let everyone know, the National Railway strike isn't on that day, so you can travel, you'll be fine. It's just us cleaners that are on strike at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bella. And just to say a huge thank you to Ros, Bella, Bill, Sue, Annie, Jane and Lizzie. Proper heroes across Britain. So thanks very much, and thanks everyone for coming tonight, and look forward to seeing you again soon.